Welcome to another edition of Sit Down with Steve. I'm Steve Wilson, coming to you live from the Urban Cadillac Studio on the 520 Causeway, Merritt Island. And you know, when I started this series of interviews, Sit Down with Steve, a little over a year ago, my intent was to sit down and talk with people that truly made a difference in their community. And the two people that are with me today, they're at the top of the list. They do some amazing things along with some other individuals that unfortunately couldn't make it today, but I'd like to introduce to the show Stacey Sima to my immediate right, and her husband Shawn Sima to my far right. First, Stacey, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
And Shawn, thanks for taking the time to be here.
Thank you for having us. We really appreciate it.
You know, I feel like we have so much to talk about centered around one particular area, which in my mind is CPR, AEDs, and the importance of both of those. But I want to find out a little bit about yourself before we get too far into it. Shawn, are you originally from this area?
No, we're not. We're originally from Jacksonville, Florida. Mm-hmm. We were stationed at Patrick from 02 to 05 with the Air Force. And then we left, and I retired out of a base in Shreveport, Louisiana. And we knew we wanted to come back here to the Space Coast just because of, you know, the schools and family and the area. So that's how we wound up back here.
Stacey, did you grow up in Jacksonville?
I sure did.
Did
yeah.
you? Duval County.
Yeah.
That's right. 904, baby.
Now we're in the 321.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
But, you know, I just had the chance to meet you all for the first time today. I feel like I've known you because I've seen you in the community and seen you around, and I knew of you. And I had the chance to meet, I don't know, a coworker, but Evan Ernst, who you know very well. Mm-hmm. About 2 years ago, my broadcasting partner, Orville Susong, and I were at Cocoa Beach High School. It was the winter sports were just kicking off, and we were there to do some interviews, and Evan was there doing some heart screening. Mm-hmm. And we had a chance to sit down and talk with him, do a short interview. And I know you all are involved with that as well. And I want to, let's start with you first, Shawn. CPR, AEDs, tell us a little bit about what they are, the importance of them, and how you all got involved.
I'll start from the beginning for us. Like I said, we retired in 2012, and we knew we wanted to move back here, and we did. Had a great job, a nice house, a nice car. Life was really good for us. I mean, we had everything but the picket fence, but our HOA has rules against that.
Yeah.
So, and then in February of 2016, my 16-year-old daughter, you know, beautiful, healthy, an athlete her whole life. I mean, played sports from the time she was 4 years old. Made a fateful, but I'm so glad, decision to go to the old Sun Bay Gym, which used to be on Morrell and Vieira Boulevard. And long story short, she got on a treadmill, and out of nowhere, my daughter basically died and went flying through the air, and before she hit the floor, she was dead. She had suffered sudden cardiac arrest. So thankfully for us, there was some members in the gym. One of them, Jack Rhodes, had just taken a CPR course over Beachside. Another, Bill Sick, was a former lifeguard. John Lynch was a former New York State policeman. And then Amanda Miller was someone who had taken CPR and knew to get to AED. So long story short, they all worked together and did CPR. They used an AED on Lexi, and it took about 15 minutes or so for the ambulance to get there. And that's, you know, through no fault of their own. I know they're super busy, but you know, the moral of the story is if those folks didn't step up and act, my daughter would be dead right now, and instead she's alive. And I've been a physician's assistant for over 20 years. I'm a medical guy. And that night they flew my daughter to ORMC, and I met her doctor, her cardiologist. And the first thing he said to me is, okay, your daughter just survived the unsurvivable, and now we have to put a pacemaker defibrillator inside her chest. And I looked at him and I was like, what do you mean? She's only 16 years old. And his name is Dr. Fallart, and he looked me right in the face And he said, you have no idea what just happened to your daughter and your family. you basically just hit the lottery. And he said, tonight, he said, do some reading so you find out. And I was blown away on the statistics for sudden cardiac arrest and even what it is. Sudden cardiac arrest for all of you, and I didn't understand this as a 20-year medical guy. I do orthopedics, so we're like sort of the Neanderthals of medicine. But sudden cardiac arrest is typically an electrical problem. You're alive to dead very, very shortly, where a heart attack is typically a clogged artery. You get the chest pain, the shortness of breath, we're probably all old enough to remember the Fred Sanford heart attack, right? There's usually a little bit of a warning before you go down. Sudden cardiac arrest, just like I said with Lexi, typically you're alive and you're dead before you hit the ground. There's no warning. And, typically, you have 1 to 3 minutes to really act fast. And so that's sort of how we got involved in the AED CPR game. I'll get churchy on you, then I'm going to let you talk to Stacey. I told you I talk a lot. But that night, looking at my daughter and realizing what happened to her, God doesn't need any deal I have to offer him, but I made so many deals with God to please save my daughter. And if he did, that I would pay this forward. And I think that's why we're so passionate about what we do and why people call me a crazy man, to pay this forward and spread awareness.
Stacey, as a mother, I cannot imagine what you had to go through. Was it a phone call you received that made you aware of the...
We were actually sitting at Long Doggers right behind the hospital, and Shawn kept getting phone call after phone call, and we were trying to listen to our son's lacrosse coach lead the meeting that he was leading, and we thought, we'll get to it. He didn't really recognize the number or anything. And finally, someone texted him and said, does your daughter have blonde hair and a knee brace on? And is she at Sunbay Fitness right now? And he said, yes. He said, well, get over here right now. And luckily, we were like a block. Like, we just ran out of Long Doggers and ran right to the gym, and we were there before the EMS actually arrived. So, yeah. It was pretty crazy.
And Lexi, from what I understand, she was an athlete. She was in good shape, so it wasn't somebody sat around on the couch, day after day after day and got on a treadmill and overdid it and collapsed. This could have happened to anyone.
Yes.
And it happens this is one thing I didn't know. There's always a board question. Every few years you have to recertify on your medical boards. And there's always a question of, you have an athlete, scores a basket, turns around and falls over in a sudden cardiac arrest. What are you thinking? And it's usually hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And we see it occasionally on TV around here. But what we found out is there's at least 7,000, and there's probably more, kids every single year that go down with sudden cardiac arrest. That's almost 20 kids a day. But it doesn't happen in Brevard. It happens occasionally in Brevard. It may happen in Washington State. It may happen in Oklahoma. But every day, we have 20 kids basically on average that die every single day. And, most people aren't aware of it. Sudden cardiac arrest is the #1 killer of all Americans. It's the #1 killer at school. It's the #1 killer of our athletes. It's the #1 killer at church. It's the #1 killer at gym. If you say, if you're on Family Feud and they ask you what's the #1 killer of blank,
That's the answer.
It's probably the answer, honestly.
Yeah.
Well, Stacey, how is Lexi doing today?
She's doing great. She's actually attending nursing school over in Orlando, and she's going to be starting a job at Orlando Health with her cardiologist that actually put her pacemaker in. So.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Good for her.
Yeah.
I want to talk a little bit about who we play for. Like I said, I had the chance to meet Evan Ernst, who started Who We Play For a number of years ago. I met Evan two years ago, but let's talk a little bit about what Who We Play For is and how they have helped the community and what they would like to see from the community. Shawn?
Yeah, so Who We Play For originated on the soccer field at Cocoa Beach High School. In 2007, Rafe Macaron, again, who was you know, like
Stellar
Alexi,
athlete.
a star athlete, you know, a stud soccer player. And one day at practice, they were running, and out of nowhere, he went down. And they tried to do CPR. They tried to save him. They ran around the school campus trying to find the AED, and apparently it was locked up in the office. And the outcome was not good. Rafe did not make it. And really, that's the statistic is 90% of people don't make it. I mean, when Lexi had hers, it was 7%. But long story short, all of his friends, led by Evan Ernst, they all went to Florida State together. And I forget which room number he always says, but in a dormitory.
Well, 114?
Yes,
Maybe.
yeah.
I thought
You got it. You got
He told
it.
me that 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah,
too
like
many
I
head
remembered it from
injuries
2 years
for me.
ago.
That's pretty great, yeah.
Don't let your kids play football. But yeah, so room 114, they came up with the concept of who we play for. And what we know about Rafe was he had a condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And that is something that can be discovered on an EKG, believe it or not. And so they started this program where we're going to go around and screen, you know, athletes before they get on the field. The stethoscope exam is just not good enough, you know, to catch a lot of these, disease processes that kill our kids and our athletes. And they've been at it for, a good while, and have saved a lot of kids. And they screen, all over the country. I know they've gone to even Panama and some other areas, all over the world to screen. And they are just an incredible group of kids. You know, he's 28 now, so I can't call him a kid anymore.
He's a kid to us.
But he's an amazing human being. That whole crew is, honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's very passionate about what he does, and obviously you all are too. Let's look at the Brevard County schools here on the Space Coast. How are we right now as it relates to CPR training? Are the young people, middle school, high school students, are they getting the training? Are the AEDs in the schools? Have we made any headway in the last few years? I don't know who better answer that question.
Probably
Maybe
him.
I'll
Yeah.
answer that, sorry.
No, it's his thing.
Like I said, I made a lot of deals with God, and one of them was that night I learned of this problem, the lack of training, the lack of education, the lack of AEDs. In July of 2016, I did a blanket email to all of our school board members to ask them, we have a problem here. Florida is only one of 11 states in the entire country that doesn't teach their kids a 1-hour course on how to save a life, just one time in high school. So I reached out, and our school board member at the time was Karen Henderson, and she reached back to me and got me set up with some folks in the school board. And then, as fate would have it, Matt Susan took over for her that January, and I went and met with him, and it was like a nuclear explosion. I mean, Matt, basically, what do you need? What's going on here? And so a few months later, we went before the school board, and me and Lexi got up there and spoke to the school board about hands-only CPR as a graduation requirement, AEDs in every single school. And in November of 2017, we were able to pass a policy here in Brevard County where now every kid has to have at least a 1-hour hands-only CPR course to graduate high school. Every high school in Brevard has at least 3 AEDs. Every middle school has at least 2 AEDs. And I believe it's every elementary school has at least 1 AED. So after that, we moved forward with, trying to make the heart screens mandatory. Evan and Mr. Kurt Eason, who's the chief of our board of directors, I guess, they went to Osceola, and they made it mandatory that kids have to have an EKG before they can play sports. And then we did it here. We took many of our kids that we had found prior to it being mandatory, And one by one, we had each kid and their parents come up and speak at the podium, and it was very, very powerful. And June 1st of this year, it became a policy thanks to what I think is the best school board in the country.
You know, and there's always a need for help, whether it's labor, financial support, whatever the case may be. If somebody's watching this now and it's hit a button with them and they want to help somehow, how would they go about contacting you all or Evan, or what should they do at this point?
They can reach out to our webpage. It's www.whoweplayfor.org. And on that website, it shows where you can volunteer, where you can donate to our cause, wherever you feel the need pulling you. It is all there for the information to just go to and sign up for. So I would say probably volunteers. We're always looking for volunteers. If you're in nursing school or EMT that has some off time, or if it's just a child in school that needs those extra credits for college. Whoever you are, if there's something that you would like to do with us, just let us know by contacting our website.
Okay. And I understand you have an event coming up on February 8th.
Yes.
Fundraiser of some sort. You're still working on the particulars, is that right? Do you know a little bit about it, where it's going to be? We know it's going to be on the 8th of February. Do you know where it's going to be and what all is going to take place?
It's actually a community effort with one of our big sponsors in town, Health First. Partnered with Who We Play For, and we're going to be doing it at the Gateway Health First location.
Okay.
It's going to be a heart screening event. It's going to be a educational CPR event. Marcus Mays will be there to kind of meet and greet everyone with a couple of other athletes we're trying to get out to just promote our event. And yes, definitely probably a fundraiser also.
Yeah, any donations are welcome. Our screenings, it's $20 a child. If the kid is on free and reduced lunch, then it's free. And then that's where a lot of these donations come in. We work with Parish Medical Center, Health First, the Brevard Medical Society.
Space Coast Health Foundation.
Yeah, there's a lot of great partners that are doing their part. And since June, since this became mandatory, we've identified 11 potentially deadly heart conditions, and so far 8 kids have undergone heart procedures to correct these conditions that at some point could have killed them. And most of them are all no symptoms, just a healthy kid coming in to get cleared to do sports.
You know, if you just hear one, if you save one, that's phenomenal. But to hear the numbers that you've talked about the last few minutes is just staggering. Nationwide, it's the #1 killer.
Yeah.
Looking at the big picture, Shawn, what is there one thing, one item? What do you need to accomplish your goal? What's the big? I know probably multiple things, but is there one thing that stands out, saying, I really wish we had more money, more labor, whatever?
Yeah, definitely. Money is always good,
Yeah.
But for me, it's education and letting people be aware that this does happen. We need media sources like yourself and others to publicize this. This is an epidemic that kills a lot of kids. And even the numbers, we just went to a big conference this weekend called Parent Heart Watch. And it's all families like ours, and many of them with a not so good outcome. I mean, most of these parents have lost their children. And all of us walk around sort of ignorant, if you will. Maybe that's not a good word, but we just don't think it's going to happen to us. And we really need to publicize it. If you are going to make it mandatory that we have guards and school shooter protection, the #1 killer at school is sudden cardiac arrest, not only of kids, but of people like us, of teachers. We just had a janitor last week pass away at Quest Middle School of a heart attack. And we don't know about it. We don't realize it's going on. And that's really the big thing, is I want people to be aware and do something about it and be ready. Learn a 10-minute skill that if everybody learned it and acted, we could save over 100,000 lives a year in the United States. That's why I want everyone to have a simple 1-hour CPR course. You don't have to be a card carrier to save a life. You need to know a couple steps.
It's the essentials, yeah.
And I know Who We Play For, once again, they're involved in social media. You have a Facebook page, Instagram. You can reach them via social media, and also the website, once again, is
whoweplayfor.org.
whoweplayfor.org. Stacey, final thoughts? Anything you'd like to share before we sign off, so to speak?
Just to mirror what he said, just awareness is our huge thing, honestly. If we can save one kid,
All the time and effort is worth it. Shawn, final thoughts?
Just exactly what she said. I mean, this is a devastating problem. I mean, what worse in this world than to lose your child, especially if somebody would call and say your kid was injured or died in a car crash, it would make more sense. It doesn't make sense that these healthy kids are passing away so suddenly. And I want all parents, really all of us, to take it serious, because it happens, and it happens a lot. 1 in 300 kids have a ticking time bomb in their chest, and we have to do something to change it. And the #1 killer in Florida is heart disease, and we can do something with it. And that's the big message, I would say, for what we're doing.
yeah.
It's whoweplayfor.org, and the numbers are staggering. Stacey, Sima, and Shawn. Sima, thank you so much both for being here today.
For having us.
Thank you.
This has been educational. I thought I knew a little bit about what you all did, but the numbers, I had no idea they are what they are. But thanks again for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
You're very welcome. So for Stacey and Shawn and our title sponsor, Urban Automotive, I'm Steve Wilson with the Friday Night Locker Room and Space Coast Daily TV.